Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm letting everyone into the room and we'll start in a minute. Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Open Academy Masterclass on advocacy skills. We are absolutely delighted to have you all here with us. My name is Marta. I'm the Open Academy Senior Manager, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Before we dive in, just a bit of housekeeping to ensure everything runs smoothly. First, this is an hour and a half session with no break. Second, if you haven't done so already, please introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know your name and where you're joining from. Third, please keep your microphones on mute throughout the session to avoid any background noise. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand or pop your question into the chat at any time. And don't worry, there will be also dedicated time for Q&A at the end. Finally, we'd love your feedback, so please take a minute to complete the survey that will pop up at the end of the session. Now, let's talk about why we're here. Today's masterclass is all about advocacy skills, how to advocate successfully and effectively for the objectives that you're passionate about. We'll be covering everything from identifying advocacy prospects, engaging with key stakeholders, managing complex dynamics, and securing resources to make real change within the rare disease community. Our speaker today is an absolute expert in this field, Han Volk, founder and CEO of HVFC International, a firm dedicated to helping organizations create meaningful impact through advocacy. Han will be sharing practical tips and tools that you can use right away to drive positive change for your cause. And he's also happy to take questions throughout his presentation. So feel free to raise your hand or ask in the chat if something pops up. Before we get started, just a quick announcement. Applications for the Open Academy Schools 2025 are now open. If you want to dive deeper into medicine development, translational research, AI and ethics in research, and much more, don't miss this opportunity. You can apply until the 26th of October. If you've already completed the two schools, maybe now it's time to encourage others in your organization to apply. And I hope to see all of you again on the 29th for the second masterclass of this series. All right, that's it from me. I think let's get started. Han, over to you. I'll stop sharing, and I'll be on the chat.
Excellent. So nice to see you all. I see many faces in my screen, so that's super cool. And I see in the chats your locations popping up, all kinds of countries. Yeah, so super cool. And yeah, super nice that you're all here. I see that at least one is from the Netherlands, where I'm also from, and indeed it's a bit raining here. So today I'm going to work with you on the topic of advocacy. There's a lot to say about it. We have a short period of time, and I want to respect everyone's time. So I do want to make sure that we conclude before 2 p.m. my time. But yeah, if there are things you would like to discuss afterwards, or you think have not been addressed today or whatever, feel free to reach out to me during the session, at the end of the session, or afterwards as well. I'm happy to assist you with whatever issue you might have on the topic of advocacy. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Han, as I mentioned. I am the founder of HVFC. that is a consultancy, and we help organizations, also a few members of Eurodis in broad range of services. So we help organizations to raise more funding, so to build relations with donors and with other stakeholders to make sure that there's sufficient funding coming in. We help organizations to improve their impact, so through advocacy, by improving their programming, and we do capacity building. So a lot of coaching and trainings we offer, and that's a bit what we do. We work globally, so I started it in the Netherlands, but we are present all over the world at the moment. Little bit more about me. So before I started this 9 years ago, I've always worked on the other side of the table with organizations like yours in health, in sustainability, in development, as either director of fundraising or director of advocacy. And there's a lot of overlap between the two. Not everyone in my fields agrees, but I'm the kind of fundraiser that says that advocacy and fundraising they overlap quite a lot in the activities. So yeah, and I'm happy to spend today and also later this month a session with all of you to talk about two important skills. One is on advocacy in general, and one is zooming in on negotiation. So I hope to see you all in that session as well. So what are we going to do today? Well, first of all, I do want to talk to you about what is it that we actually are going to talk about. So what is advocacy, and why is it relevant? Maybe an open door, but it is important that we're a bit on the same page here. And then I normally see two types of advocacy, and I do want to make the distinction. I got some input from some of you as well prior to this session, and I summarized that in like two different types of advocacy. One is tailored a bit more to individuals, and one is more advocacy to a group. So I do want to address those two separately. That's about it. You can ask any question in between. I'm not looking at the chat, so if simply because I don't have enough screens. So if there's something I need to address, then just raise your hand or make sure that someone asks a question on behalf of you, and we take it from there. So let's start about advocacy. And I was making this dream because I didn't know exactly who was coming and which organizations you represent. So I was thinking about what is it that you might think about. That's always difficult when we talk about advocacy. And I made like a mind map for myself, and that I fed into ChatGPT, and this is what we got as a picture. So just curious, is this something that's correlates a bit with how you see advocacy for your work, or did ChatGPT or maybe me got a fully wrong picture? Is this a bit how you see it? Little bit. Okay, let's see how we can make this picture better at the end of today. So before I'm going to answer what advocacy is to me, I want you to spend 2 minutes or so, just think what advocacy means to you. It is in the core of your organizations, of course, but I can imagine that we have quite a few different kind of feelings about what advocacy might be. So I'm very curious how you see advocacy, and I'm also very curious about why you think we are discussing it today. Because yeah, all of your organizations are into this, and still we're talking about it. So why is that? So yeah, if you can just spend 2 minutes or so and leave your ideas in the chat. I will try to read the chat, and I will ask a few of you afterwards to just share what you think. So what is advocacy to you, and why do you think, or why do we discuss it for today in this session? If you can just leave it in the chat, then we continue in 2 minutes. Great input already.
Great. Some comments already?
Yeah, great inputs. While you're all typing, Katerina, if I pronounce your name well, you write a way to bridging a gap. Can you maybe explain what you mean with that verbally? So if you can unmute and.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon already, everyone. My name is Katerina. I write a way of bridging a gap because like we all NGOs that are specific on such topics, and we all have gaps that we want to bridge for our communities, and advocacy is a way how we can bridge this gap. So we can see it as a path, as a tool, as something that we can use to fulfill the gap in our communities.
Nice. Great, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. And Stefania, you write about bringing positive change. Can you elaborate a bit on that? By unmuting and sharing it with the group. Yes.
Sorry, you would like me to give some other hints about what I said?
Yeah, can you explain a bit what you mean by bringing the positive change?
Yeah, we act for supporting, for defending a cause that we assume it is important. So it means to begin a series of activities which can influence also public or social decisions. And in our area, which is especially the rare disease area, this has a special meaning. So we can also create pressure groups or make a change in this way. So uniting for a common cause.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, so great inputs, and you see all kinds of different perspectives on it, and that's all great because you all work for different organizations, and but there is of course overlap, and we want to make sure that the voice of the people that we work with or work for is being heard, and but there's a bit more to it, if you ask me. And so before you start working on advocacy, it is important that you have an advocacy plan, right? So which you're going to execute and you're going to measure, and you can make it very formal, you can make it informal. That's not the question here, but what is important is that we have a certain objective in mind, and we want the voice to be heard. But why do we want the voice to be heard? You know, there is a question. So all of it starts with the question of why. You do amazing things, but why is it that you are doing these things? And that by answering that question, you can see if the advocacy approach that you have in mind or that you have been executing for the last years or so, if that is successful, if you can even be more successful by doing other things, by talking to other people, by And it's not only about making sure that the voice is being heard, we also want them to do something with it, right? So that's the we don't want to talk to a wall, you know. It's we want, in this case, the wall to do something with that voice. So either break down the wall, or you know. So it all starts with the why. And from the input that I got prior to this session, I was able to distillate at least 2 different objectives, just to coming from the group. So just to showcase the broadness of objectives that you might have. So a little bit in my own words, but one of the objectives that I saw in the input is to get sufficient support in the parliament of one of your home countries to elaborate a law to ensure free access for patients to medication. So that's one. The other one is focusing more on the general public, and has a slightly different objective, of course. So it is to get public visibility of people living with rare diseases, to reduce the stigma and empower the patient. So that is, of course, broader and less measurable, perhaps, but of course it is still an advocacy objective. And depending on your approach, or depending on your goal, you might want to adjust your approach, and I think you already do that in practice. So let us just zoom in on the first one. So we try to do advocacy towards an individual. And so I think the first objective that has been set here is focusing on an individual, or maybe a group of individuals. And like members of parliament, there is a small group of people that we want to target. And if we can just convince those people to act in line with what we have in mind, it's okay. It's maybe nice if the general public is in support of what we do, for example, but it's not per se contributing to the objective that we have set. As long as we get a law to ensure free access for patients to medication, we've reached our objective. And that means in your advocacy approach, you can have a very tailored, a very focused approach, because the only thing we need to do is make sure that enough members in parliament are going to be on board, right? So that's the that's the only thing we need to do. Sounding easier than it is, but yeah, it's in our approach is relatively easy. We know the landscape. In the Netherlands, where I'm from, we have 150 people in parliament. We have 75 people in Congress. So if we want to make sure that the law passes, the only thing we need to do is make sure that half of the 225 people are on board. That's the only thing we need to do. Yeah. So yeah, that's a bit where we are. Just out of curiosity, how many? Maybe you can just raise your hand. I will not treat it as a question, but is focusing on political advocacy? Yeah. I see quite a lot of hands, so that's the yeah, but not everyone. So that's the good. So what is important is that we are able to spotlight the right person that we want to attract, right? So let's say these are all the members of parliament, the one or the group of people that we need to convince. That's the only thing we need to do, is try to find them and convince them that they should do whatever we have in mind that is going to contribute to the goal of making sure that this law is going to pass. That's maybe we want them to actually propose the law, or maybe they are going to influence other politicians, or they're going to do whatever we think is needed to make sure that that's going to help. Main thing is that we try to target the right politicians to convince them. Ideally, we can reach in the Netherlands the 225 politicians, and in your country the numbers will be different. But we don't necessarily have to convince all of them to be on board, right? Maybe a small group is sufficient as a snowball to make sure that the rest is going to be on board as well. So how can we find this right, in this case, this politician to work with us? Just before I continue, how do you select members of parliament? If you do advocacy towards them, how do you select who do you reach out to and who don't you reach out to? Who wants to share?
Anyone would like to share their experience in the chat or unmute and share it for the whole group?
I can start if that's all right.
Yeah, please, Maria. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Not that I have any personal experience to share, but by common sense, I would think to contact first those politicians that might be more aligned with how we think, rather than go into the completely opposite.
Yeah.
And then trying to create that snowball that you mentioned.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So you start with the ones that are closest to you, and then yeah, very good. Yeah. Who has a different approach? No.
There are a few comments on the chat.
Oh. Let me quickly take a look at the chat then. Through an ombudsman, yeah. Francis, a rare disease MP research group, very good. Yeah, so there is a focus group within the parliament that is focusing on the rare diseases. So that's great. Yeah. So it is important that you make some sort of a checklist to yourself, like who is it that you want to target. And so I made a very simple checklist, and it is not the one you should use, but obviously, you know, the person needs to be a member of parliament because that's the objective. Ideally, it's a spokesperson on health or a member of this rare disease working group. Because those are the people that, so if you have a political party and you have, let's say, 10 people part of the political party in parliament, only one is a spokesperson of health, and that's the person that is going to speak on behalf of all 10. So you can talk to the other 9, but they might have some influence, but they are less influential than the spokesperson. Specific political party or parties perhaps that you want to target. It's close to what Maria was saying as well, that the ones that are closer to the topic, of course, easiest to get on board. Their reputation might be relevant as well. So that's the I of course don't know how that is in all of your countries, but some political parties are a bit more favorable than the others. So if you have a strong government, for example, it's important that you have some support within the political parties behind the government. If you don't have a strong government, then maybe it's better to seek the opposition first, because they need some pocket change, you know, the members in government, and yeah, so by making sure that this law, for example, is being passed, they might be able to build this bridge that they had in mind. So, you know, that's so it's yeah, so that's where you start thinking. And of course, a level of accessibility might be a topic that you have in mind. Some members of parliament are easier to access than others, and nowadays it's working quite well with social media, for example. You can just be in direct contact with any member of parliament, even through when a debate is happening. Like when I started working as an advocate or a lobbyist, that's over 20 years ago, when the actual debate was happening, that was the time that I couldn't do so much anymore. You know, and nowadays you can just go on X and you or on WhatsApp and you communicate directly with the member of parliament, saying, "Hey, you should know this, or you should know that, or did you know that that person said this before?" Or so throughout the debate, you can even communicate with the members of parliament. But the level of accessibility then matters. Do you have access to that to those people? Yeah. Then when you have pinpointed one or a few members of parliament in this example, and the only thing we've done so far is just selecting our advocacy targets, right? That's the first step, identifying, we know what we want, we know who we want to convince, but we haven't thought of the story yet. Before I dive into this, knowing this goal that you have in mind, I'm just curious if you can. I will put you in a few subgroups. So if you can just talk for 10 minutes or so with each other, like what is the argument that you would use to convince members of parliament in this example that a law should be created that ensures free access for patients to medication. I hope this example is a bit close to what you normally work on. I will just put you randomly in a few groups, and I will bring you back. And I'm just curious to hear a bit about the argumentation that you are going to use if you're going to reach out to Parliament, members of Parliament. There's no right, there is no wrong, but yeah, just very curious what you come up with. I will make 10 different meeting rooms, so you will be with 3 or 4 people. I'm not sure, 4 people or so on average in one group. And I will call you back in about 10 minutes, and let's see what you came up with. Here you go. So,
could you maybe also write in the chat the question so
yeah.
they have it? Okay.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Okay, see you in 10 minutes. Everyone is joining the breakout rooms.
So we're recording again. So arguments in the field of cost effectiveness, they normally work. Not always. And where does it and where doesn't it? So I think the main difference is with the politicians, if they have a vision that is long-term or short-term. Populist parties, they often have a more short-term focus, right? So saving money in the future is not an argument that they find interesting. They want something that is going to help today. So they rather build an extra hospital than giving free medication. So we prevent people to go to hospital. Even if the hospital is 10 times more expensive or 100 times more expensive, they would still prefer the hospital. Simply because it's something that can be done today. And or can be announced in a day, and then the bricks can be put in the land the next month, and it's very tangible. So but in itself, the responsibility of how do you spend your money normally works. I put in 5 drivers that I normally see with politicians, and this is not an exclusive list, but you might want to use them in your argumentation to them, because they are very important to politicians. One is, how is it going to make their voters or potential voters benefit from this? Politicians want to be elected. They have been elected and they need to be elected again. So everything that is going to help their constituency, if you're able to address that, you have a listening ear. So if you're helping people that are not part of their community or they're part of their voter base, it's going to be more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. And especially with rare diseases, there won't be a lot of people, of course, that are part of the. It's easier if you focus for medication for heart diseases or lung diseases or cancer, those types of things, of course, because you have a lot more luck, not luck, but much bigger group within their constituency. But it is important to think about that. So you see, for example, organizations that do advocacy for the elderly, they are more successful than organizations that do advocacy for children, simply because the elderly, they vote and the children don't. So yeah, so keep in mind who are their voters and can we connect to that? Reputation is super important for politicians. It is all about themselves. For whatever reason, it has to do with getting the voters, of course, in, but it's all about personal reputation. So it's, and one has it a bit more than the other, but all of the politicians I know have this above average. This, my reputation is important. So if we can help them to boost their reputation, that is going to be interesting to them. So if they can claim to be the politician that empowers most people in your country, for example, or that gives access to healthcare to most people, or has an eye for people that are not being seen by others, if we can give them that reputation, some will find it very, very interesting. A bit connected to that is, but I always challenge myself, if we can convince a member of parliament, will they make it to the 8 o'clock news if they do so? And that has to do with reputation, it has to do with getting voters, but also about political party and relevance. But if we can make them to get a quote on the 8 o'clock news, they will say whatever we want them to say. Right, so that's the if we can formulate whatever we want them to do and are able to use argumentation that can be put in 2 sentences and that everyone will understand and is newsworthy, you will know that for certain that you have a listening ear to whatever it is. So timing is, for example, very important. When are we doing advocacy? When there's a lot of other news going on, then probably they won't listen to you because they won't make it to the news. If there's a crisis or there's an issue or whatever that is somehow connected to your advocacy objective, then the timing is crucial. So simple messaging, timing, that will make it to the 8 o'clock news. I put family there because although they're politicians, they're also people and they have family and friends. And if we can connect our argumentation to something that is very close to themselves, as a personal driver, you have a higher chance, of course, on getting them on board. So if they have someone in their network that has a rare disease, for example, of course, they will listen more to this. But even if they don't have it, maybe we can plant the seed of them just thinking about it by talking to other parents or talking to other stakeholders that, or maybe do a 3D experience or so, like how is it to experience all of this and then explain what they can do to resolve it. that helps. So if we can make it very personal to them, the more personal it is, the easier it is, of course, for them to understand why you do all of this. And last but not least, I put in career. So a politician is a member of parliament for a short period of his or her life. And sometimes 2 years, sometimes 4 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years. But it's a relatively short time of their career. So most of them are thinking about next steps constantly. So if we can help them to start thinking about getting a new job afterwards, you will find them intrigued about what you're talking about. And that can be very concrete, but often it's a bit more like, if you leave this legacy, then look at what doors are being opened for you. You know, that's the so for example, if this politician is the one that makes this free medication possible or something else possible, that's a legacy for life. That's the person, you know, even 10 years afterwards or so, this person will still be reminded of the first one that made this happen. And that is what politicians like. Thinking about timing, so you know, all countries, the cycle is slightly different, but to take the Netherlands as an example, we have 4 years cycles, maximum 4 years. So often it's shorter than that. But in maximum, we have a government for 4 years. We have new elections, new parliament, new government. And that means that if you do your advocacy in year 3, and we can come up with a very concrete, very simple argument that or a solution that is also their personal legacy, it will mean that they also have something after their political life, and they will be remembered for that, and it will have a positive effect on their career. So also help them to think. That's the main thing about what happens after they are a politician and how this is going to help them. We're not going to go any deeper on that, but I do want to challenge you to you could do this after the session, but what kind of different types of arguments or timing you can use to actually use your politicians. And feel free to share a few examples after the workshop with me, and I'm happy to give some feedback on that and see if we can spice it up a bit. Because with only content, we're not going to convince them. So it's a bit more. Last but not least, on the politicians, I think it is important that in your story, there is a call to action. So we can convince them that this is needed. We can convince them that it's important that there is free access to medication. And then what? What do we want them to do? And funnily enough, that is often forgotten. So politicians are being briefed about the importance, but if we don't tell them what we expect from them, nothing happens. So tell them what you want them to do. So ask questions to the minister about this topic, or come up with a draft legislation on this, or get me a meeting with another political party so we can get more support, or what is it that you want from them? And then you can have a discussion on what do you then need to make that happen, and can we help you with that? So, and that can be practical stuff, like if it's if we want them to present a law, writing a law takes a lot of time, and politicians are responsible for many subjects, and this is only one of them. And so you can offer to help by saying, let us draft the first version of the law and send it to you. Is that going to help you? And we will do all the argumentation, and we will come up with all the sources and all of that, saving you 90% of your time. And you will be surprised that most of them say, oh, please help me with that. and they will. And sometimes people are surprised to find out that politicians take 100% of the text they get from an advocate when they ask questions to a minister or when they present a law. But this is just how it works, and from an efficiency point of view, there is no other way they can do so. So yeah, just make sure that you have a call for action, and you have a discussion on how you can support them in this. Good. So this is focusing on politicians. The other thing I would like to discuss with you today is how we can do advocacy towards a group. And remember, the second objective that we were talking about is getting public visibility of people living with rare diseases to reduce the stigma and empower the patients. There was a sentence in my wording again, but formulated by one of you as an advocacy objective. And so the big difference between targeting a politician where you know this is the person, or at least in this very small group of people, these are the people that we want to target, so very focused on one individual. We're now going to target a whole group of people. And also here, if we talk about stigma and if we talk about the visibility of people with rare diseases, and making sure that people are familiar with it and they act in a way that we expect them to act and behave. Again, the thing is, we are not going to convince everyone, and we're not going to make the rare diseases visible to everyone in your society. And that's also not needed. Now, if you want to make sure that the stigma disappears, it depends a bit on your exact objective, but often you need a group of people, the front runners that go first. They inspire the majority, and then you always have a group that is that simply doesn't get it and needs a whole lot of time, sometimes centuries, to accept certain changes in society. So important for you is that you are going to find a group of people that you want to target. So the front runners, that's where you start. So who are the people that you can convince easiest to support your causes? And not only should they be front runners, ideally these are also people with a megaphone. So these are people that have access to a larger group of people. So, for example, easy example is if you target youth, for example. We want youth to see people with rare diseases more, so the stigma disappears in that group. You can easily connect with them on social media and ideally through those influencers that are out there. So if we can convince a few influencers to be part of our program and they spread the word to their community, we have a highly efficient way to spread the word to the community that we have in mind. What is not super effective is if you spread your resources too thin over many categories. Not all publicity works. So what we sometimes see is that organizations, they write something in a newspaper, and then they have a post on social media, and then they do something else, they organize an event somewhere or so. But there's no connection between the two. Social media is being read by the youth, the event is being visited by maybe people with young children, and the newspaper is being read by the elderly. There's no connection between the three examples here. However, if we tailor it towards one group only and spread the three activities towards one group, then of course we will have a lot more impact. And so it's important that if you look at the whole society, when I was looking at the objective, it's super broad still. We need to think about who first, and is going to be an inspiration for the second group, and then the rest will follow. That's normally how you set up an advocacy campaign. And also here, I made life a little bit easy for me, but I just copied this slide that we just had with the politicians. And also here it is about finding the arguments that are going to work in this group. And depending on the target group, all of these things they matter, and maybe many more things they matter. But if I look at my own children, I have 3 children, for example. They, if I tell them tonight that I met all of you, they're fascinated by it and they want to learn more about it. But they're only going to spread it within their group of friends if they think it will help their reputation in the group, right? So that's the so if the leader of the group, for example, is on board, then the others will follow. So that's the so it's important that we think about all of these things before we do our outreach to the group of people. It's a bit more difficult because it's not one individual. So the concept you will use is going to be a bit more broader than with the politician. Then we can really think about what is your next step in your life, or what does your family look like. This is a bit broader, but that's okay because we're not targeting one specific individual. And from that, you develop your strategy. So if we have certain arguments that we want to use to the elderly, and we also have certain arguments that we want to use to people that are more thinking that they absorb the news more, and others are more family oriented, for example. You use different strategies to target them. So all of this, I think what is important is that you summarize all of this in a communication plan or an advocacy plan that you're going to develop. So you select who is it that you want to target, what is driving them, and then what argumentation am I going to use to get them on board. And for all plans that you develop, please make sure that you make it as measurable as possible. So what resources am I going to spend on it, and what do I want to get in return? And looking back at the youth's question, public visibility. What does that mean? 5 people that know about this, 500,000 people that know about it, 5 million people that know about it. Is it only about quantity? Is it about quality? And you can put indicators on that. So what is it that you actually want to see, and then build your plan around it. And more is not always better. You aim for the minimum that you need to achieve your goals, of course. So it's if you've reached your goal, you use the rest of your resources to focus on the other sub goals. 2 last things that I want to say about this, because all that we have been talking about is about getting this visibility, and but especially if we target a larger group of individuals, the action, I mentioned it with the politicians as well, but it's crucial. So there needs to be a clue in this, and reducing a stigma that's a result of something that has happened, right? So what is it that we want them to do? Should they share a message on social media? Should they talk about it in school? Should they go to their boss and say, we should make sure that in our HR we look at people with rare diseases, that they could also work here, or all of these things. So how can we make life easier at work if you have a rare disease, for example? So what is it that we actually want them to do. Because if you don't do this, then your campaign is going to dry up. And from my own experience, and maybe you recognize this, I found this and make it immeasurable always the most difficult thing. And then what happens, I see, for example, an advertisement of my organization in the newspaper or on a billboard, or I hear that whatever I pitch to the news actually makes it to the 8 o'clock news. I am very happy, and it looks like the campaign is working. But I hear it because I'm responsible for it. What I want is that others are actually taking action. So I should not look at myself, but look at the actual people that I want to target and measure if they are showing the behavior that I want them to see. So sometimes a lot is happening and I don't even see it, simply because I'm not part of the category of people, the subgroup of people that we try to target. And then the last thing I do want to say is that we've spoken a lot today about how you can do your advocacy towards people, towards politicians. And the goal that we have set is very focused, of course, on the DNA of your organization and the reason you do exist. It's very likely that you're going to be a lot more powerful if you're not going to do it on your own, but do it in partnerships with others. One of the ingredients we have is today's group and the whole network that you're part of. If it's not only you that does advocacy towards a politician, for example, but it's a bit coordinated action and it happens in all countries at the same time, your advocacy is going to be more successful. Simply because it is everywhere. If you are going to do outreach to individuals and it happens elsewhere, it will be more powerful. And this is about working together with people in the same subcategory as you are active, or in the same segment that you are active in, people with rare diseases, and support them. But maybe your partners can be found somewhere else and outside of this network. And by working together with a school or maybe companies or I don't know what other stakeholders, but other NGOs that are out there that have other objectives. But the action that needs to take place is overlapping with yours. By working together, building a consortium together with others, not only do you have to spend less on your advocacy efforts, but your message is going to be so much more powerful. It's not only you, but it's a lot of people behind you. And even if you're going to do it on your own, and it's always easiest, of course, because you can decide on your own, make sure you at least look big. The bigger you look, the better it is. So the more constituency you have behind you, the better it is. So it's not only you that think it's important, but there are also the 10,000 people or the 100,000 people behind us that are very important. So make sure you look as big as you can, making your case a lot more strong. With that, I do want to reserve some time for question and answer. So yeah. The floor is yours. And just raise your hand or just unmute if you have a question or a comment to me or to the group. So silent.
Okay, let's start again.
Yes. Very good. Yeah, we always need someone to go first, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll break the end, no problem.
Great.
So this example we did today to get free access for medications, that's great when the medication exists. But what would be your advice to do when we are, in the case of the community I represent, there is no cure for the illness of my daughter yet, but there are a good number of researchers working on that.
Yeah.
What we need is one, more researchers to try to find that cure, and the one that arrives first, great for everyone. And two, of course, money and resources to fund those projects. Okay, so how do we talk to the members of the parliament for them to understand that it's very important to, one, accelerate once we have the approval here in Europe, whenever the cure is here, how do we convince them that we need that money to come here to help small community? Because at the end of the day, it's true what you said, it's not about fighting cardiovascular problems or heart diseases or whatever. It's about something that a small population has, but it's going to have a tremendous impact on their lives and also on the families that are caregivers and everyone that care for them. So again, how do we convince, or how do we make them see how important it is to talk to the government here in Spain, for instance, and hey, please put a lot of millions to cover these costs, because of course when that's approved, it's not going to be cheap.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So the issue is, if I hear you correctly, there are not enough researchers and there's not enough funding.
I mean, not enough. What would be enough? If tomorrow one of the researchers that is currently working finds a cure, then yes, it's enough. It's more like, yes, the more investigation, the more research, the more people involved, the better, because someone will find the cure at some point. That's where we are right now.
Yeah. So it's going too slow. That's.
If you ask me as a mother, yes.
Yes. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think that the first thing I would do is, so the problem is clear, but the reason that the problem exists, that will be the starting point for my advocacy. Because what we want to do is change those, we want to change that, right? And we talk about politicians, so the assumption is, but I'm not sure if it's right, that it's because of politics that this is happening. It might be that,
I mean, in a way, yes. Imagine that all of a sudden we have a lot of funding from Europe, so that we have many researchers working on finding the cure. Yeah, that would help a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So and you need a bit of evidence to make sure that you can claim that it's a political reason behind it. Because what will happen if you go to a politician, the first thing they probably are going to say, maybe not the politician that you talk to, but then the minister that needs to be convinced, it's not my responsibility, they will say.
Yeah.
Right? It's a responsibility for the private sector, or for the universities, or for all of these things, or maybe it's a societal responsibility. If people really want things to be changed, then they will tell us, and then you're stuck. So good argumentation there is needed. And when you have it, you can start your advocacy on that. But that's where I would start. And with regards to the funding issue, there are alternatives to government funding, and maybe it's also good to look into that. And of course, governments can fund, but maybe other governments can step in, so you can make it, instead of a country kind of thing, more European or a global kind of thing, so you make it bigger.
At the end of the day, the organization that I represent here in Spain is part of the global alliance. So it's not a problem that's only happening in my country; it's happening all around the world. To be honest.
Yeah, very good,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I make sure that the timing and the messaging is coordinated with them, so you can also make sure that there's pressure coming from other countries as well. So not from you only, but it's also coming from Finland, and also coming from the Netherlands, and also coming from elsewhere. That might create pressure. Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Recommend talking to other organizations on the advocacy level, and then trying to push governments, right?
Yeah, you're stronger. That's the And personally, I would not use the argumentation that, but it's more personal style maybe. But maybe tomorrow a cure has been found, right? Or because that might give the argument also to people that don't want to move fast to say, oh, we can also wait. That's the maybe tomorrow there is a solution already. So, that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but that's more a personal thing maybe. But Sheila, you raise your hand.
Yes. So funding is a sore issue for all patient groups, no matter at what level. Besides government, which is very difficult to get, besides European funding, which implies a huge commitment by more parties, and often small organizations don't have the know-how or the energy to be part of a big project. There is pharma industry that gives support, financial support, but it is also a taboo subject because patient groups don't want to rely exclusively on pharma industry. Pharma industry interest shifts according to the market. So how can patient groups, whether at national or international level, engage and get funding from industry that is not pharma? Because it's basically a donation to do research or to get patient insights. Who else would be interested in funding a patient group on a rare disease or ultra rare? This is my big question.
Yeah, a very good question, and it's not the easiest question to answer, but there are like a few main categories where you might find them. So and one we spoke about already, so government funding. So that's the largest group. Then you have the foundation market, and there are quite a lot of foundations focusing on supporting patient groups. So and doing research for medication and treatment and diagnosis and all of that. So and that's a huge segment. So after the government money, that's the largest one. And you might be able to even find funding outside of your home country, depending on if you also add relevance outside of your country, of course. So by doing research or whatever you do.
Is there sorry to interrupt you. Is there any training to help patient groups understand how to set up a grant request and what is needed? Because believe me, when we think about this, not everybody is, oh yeah, I know how to do that.
Yeah. No, they do exist. Yeah. We also do those trainings. Yeah. So they do exist. Yeah. So if you Google and you will find some. Yeah. If you want to practice advocacy, you can also all reach out to Marta and say, Marta, we also want to have a session on that. And
yeah, absolutely.
So we can see what we can do. So, but it's definitely possible. With companies, it's always a bit difficult because ideally you have a company that is close to what you do. But in the case of health, it's very complicated because you don't want to be depending on the pharmaceutical company. I used to be the director of fundraising at the Tuberculosis Foundation in the Netherlands. And what we did is we went out only to pharmaceuticals that didn't do any medication in tuberculosis control. per definition. And so that might be something you could do. Reach out to pharmaceuticals that are not involved in the disease that you're active in, and ask them for money. What you just idea I've been thinking about a lot at that time, and the idea is still in my head. What if we as health organizations work together and set up our own in-between organization that goes to the pharmaceuticals and says, you can all donate your millions to us and we will distribute it. But there is no direct connection between the recipient and the grantee, the grantor. I think your solution is also solved, but I'm not I don't know if they're interested in that. But yeah, and with companies, the other companies, you need to have some sort of personal connection with what you do, and yeah, and that is difficult. But yeah, it's yeah, that's difficult. Yeah. Marie-Christine.
Maybe I can share my experience. I am a member of SMA Europe and I was the president when the first drug came to the market. And clearly we performed to have reimbursement more or less within 2 years in all over Europe, at least in all over the EU. So my first concern was to clearly identify the pathway in each country where you can apply for a public reimbursement. In some country, you have to look in regional way to have reimbursement, and it's very important to clearly identify the right person to advocate.
Yeah.
So it's the first step, of course, is to have an approval by EMA in the EU. And as soon as you have the approval, you have to clearly identify the pathway. Some of you, for example, Maria, you can approach Fondame who perform to have a reimbursement about the 3 most expensive drug in a rare disease in Europe, all over the country in Spain. So they can give you exactly the right way and the pathway to go to reimbursement. Normally, at least in the EU, you can have a free access or reimbursed by the governmental support in all the country of the EU country. It's challenging. You have to go country by country, but it's possible. For me, you can approach a patient organization who already done the job, so they can give you the key points and the key way. But the first is to clearly identify a right person to ask. And it's very challenging because it's changing from one country to another one, and sometimes from one region to another one.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Yeah. Marta, I see you also raise your hand.
Hi everyone. I work in the area of behavioral design. So I used to see all strategies with this behavioral lens. And if you allow me, I'll share a link with lots of behavioral issues related to giving and to charity giving.
Oh, nice.
But I just want to share that when we try to reach someone or we make a campaign or the things that we are talking to humans. So this behavioral design area, and we do some work with our other charities that we are involved. It's very interesting to think how humans function, how humans make decisions, and how the way we put it can change the way they hear us. So if you allow, I'll share a link of Ideias 42. It's an American company, I believe. They have a lot of ideas, but I just want to share that all the ideas that you started with, making it meaningful, connect to higher values, making attractive, frame the solution as beneficial, leverage social proof and advocacy, like highlighting the endorsements for influential organizations. Make it easy, perceive the barriers that we're facing when we're talking to people or government organizations. So make a behavioral informed strategy, even if it's a small strategy like mine, small, but thinking about that humans are receiving information from humans. So if you consider these variables, you already talk about many of them. But in my area, there are several toolkits that you can use to put them in a framework and make it work in a scientific way, because they are proven concepts. And from my personal experience, there is a strategy. I don't know if you talked it already. Forgive me if you did, but I didn't pick it up. That it's make it timely, because waiting for the right moment, not waiting forever, I'm not saying that, but sometimes we have to pick the moment and not asking every day, every person we meet, every meeting, we have to pick the time. It calls make it timely, make it in the right moment.
Yeah.
So I just want to share this. That is my professional job, but it's very insightful when we are thinking about getting funding for.
Yeah, no, true. And thank you so much for this. And yeah, I think it's indeed how you summarize it. That's a bit. I think the main clue also of today's session is that we talk to people. You know, that's the you made it very explicit. In the end, they're all humans, and what you need to do is connect with them as a human to human, and that's it. Whether it's for fundraising or advocacy, or as long as that connection is being made, then you're in a good position. And what motivates people to support your cause is different per person, per timing, per all of these things might be different there. So that's yeah. I think thanks for adding that at the end. And yeah, timing we talked about when you were mentioning it. I was thinking about the we have an office also in The Hague, so close to the parliament. And funnily enough, if you walk in front of the parliament on Monday, you will often see people advocating for whatever. But on Monday, there are no members of parliament in parliament. They have a day off. And but still, there are people. Such a simple thing of timing. If they would have been there a day later, there would have been 150 people listening to them, and some better than others, of course. But yeah, so timing is crucial indeed. And yeah, so good. Looking at the time, it's 2 p.m. In the Netherlands at least. So I think I hand it over to Marta.
Yeah, right on time. Excellent. So thank you everyone for staying until the end. If you've registered for the next session on the 29th about negotiation skills, we'll see you all there. The recording and the slides will be circulated afterwards. And if you have questions for Hang in the meantime, you can email them to me, and I'll share them with Han later. Thank you, everyone. I hope you are not too hungry. Grab something to eat, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks.